Hi, everyone. I am so excited to welcome my guest today. Samantha Bove is an international business coach who specializes in working with entrepreneurs in the fields of wellness and personal development. Through her signature program, Zen Boss Academy, she teaches experts and coaches how to build an online brand, launch their first digital course, and sell with integrity. Using her strategies, Samantha's clients have been able to generate six figures in their businesses, quit their jobs to work full-time on their businesses, and more. And I have worked with Sam. She is incredible, and I'm so excited to tap into her wisdom on all things sales and taking a spiritual approach to business. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sam.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited. I love talking to
you. So please tell us, what's your story? How did you end up becoming a business coach and doing the work that you do now?
So the shorter version, because there's been a lot of twists and turns as there always is, but I always had a really entrepreneurial spirit. It's like very creative, definitely beat to my own drum, definitely like the black sheep in the family, that whole vibe, and really owned it. I didn't mind telling people I don't know if I'll ever have a job, since I'm really little, just kind of saying, I feel like I'm always just going to figure it out and I want to travel and I want to see things. So I always had that real creator, wanderer kind of spirit. But I still went to college, got an advertising degree just to, I guess, have it as backup. And then all of my friends were applying for jobs and working their way towards, jobs in financial industries and banking. And everyone was always like, well, what are you going to do, Sammy? And I'm like, I don't know. At that point, Instagram was really just starting to blow up. And I was like, I'll probably just run people's Instagrams. How hard could it be? And I just had that thought. I'm like, this is a platform and that everybody is so glued into. I really like to watch people. I think in another life, I would be a sociologist. And so I was very aware of how captivating social media was by just watching people. I remember, especially in college, I traveled to Europe. I did a study abroad, and I was noticing how there and in America, on the buses there and on the metro and here in the States, in those in-between spaces, online and buses, it was just phones. And it really it kind of hurt my soul. And I think as a younger person, I'm only in my mid-20s, it's kind of, I guess, unique that it pains me so much that it has our phones has our attention so much rather than us looking into each other's eyes and talking on a bus or online or just daydreaming and using our big, beautiful brains. But anyways, I was really aware of, wow, people are just scrolling. And I thought, okay, well, this would be a good thing to go into probably for business. And so in college, I started to study social media and Instagram more and just really did it on my own in terms of Googling and watching YouTube videos. And that's actually what I started doing pretty early on, was just helping people with Instagram, helping people with marketing. My first job was with a health food startup, and I went in to that role in every sense of the word. It was a vegan company. I went vegan. Some people could definitely say I'm a little bit of an extremist sometimes. I'm creating more harmony and balance in my life now, but I went vegan for 2 years. I dedicated my whole life to this company. I was only going into my senior year of school. I worked my way up from intern to CMO to CEO. I went headfirst into the startup world. I spearheaded a multi-million-dollar round of venture capital, which if you have no idea what that means, you really don't want to. It's fundraising and pitching and a lot of really scary stuff for a 20-year-old to be doing. And it was also amazing because it taught me the foundations of running a business, hiring a team, pitching. I mean, I was 21 pitching to millionaires and billionaires, asking them to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into our little startup. So that was that was not only my first entry into business and running a business and doing the branding and the marketing and the social media and the publicity and all of that, but also in retrospect, my first experience, really trusting my intuition, because everybody really thought I was nuts. They were like, what are you doing with this soup company? what are you doing? Like they're this little soup company, but I just had this feeling when I saw them like at a farmer's market, like they're going to be huge. Like this could be huge. And I trusted that, and it led me to amazing places. It brought me incredible mentors. And most importantly, all of that truly just free work I did for a few years, got paid like really nothing. It built my confidence in myself to be able to sell, to be able to brand, and to trust myself enough to make business decisions. And so from there, I started doing consulting for more brands and more companies. I've always loved like having my hands in multiple businesses. I just think it's so fun and so amazing to be able to weave in and out of different industries. And yeah, I mean, there's lots in between, but it's kind of led me here now with still doing business coaching and consulting, but weaving in so much more of that intuitive piece, relying so much less on the strategy, which is all in my curriculum. It's all in my teaching. It's all in my program is the strategy. But honestly, it's like, to me, I used to say like 50% strategy, 50% intuition and spirituality. I think it's like 10% strategy, 90% building your spirit and your trust in yourself, because the strategy, it's a strategy. You use it. But if you don't have the energy behind it and the trust in yourself, it goes nowhere.
Before we get back to the episode, I have something exciting to tell you about. There were a couple of key things that changed everything in my life as an entrepreneur that allowed me to bring in 6 figures while working half as many hours and having more fun than ever before in my business. It was money mindset work around how I was doing business, combined with getting good at sharing strategic sales content online. I know you know that this is your year to start hitting your 10K month income goal and living the life of creative freedom and fulfillment you have been dreaming about. You're ready to be consistently attracting total dream soulmate clients through the creative content you're sharing on social media, and you want to be reaching more people, charging higher rates, and working much less. So I'm very excited to invite you to join me in Freedom Club, my mastermind, where you'll receive tailored high-level support to master the skills that will create your dream life and 6-figure dream business starting now. With focused weekly trainings and coaching calls to find the clarity on your content that's going to make you the most money, to design a simple, fun launch strategy you'll enjoy following through on, plus daily support and feedback from me in the Voxer chat, you'll find that sweet spot in your business where you're the most confident in your work, having the most fun, and making the most money. Go to withsarahmac.com/freedom club to apply now. Now let's get back to the episode. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And I'm so curious because I know like I really want to talk to you and tap into your sales wisdom in our conversation today. So I'm curious, what are some of the main things that have changed or that you've adapted in, you know, what you learn about sales working for the startup, and like what are some of the key things that have shifted or, you know, have stayed the same now that you've been working more with entrepreneurs, you know, coming from like a spiritual and a wellness and personal development perspective in their business?
Yeah. So I would say one of the biggest things is I used to think that selling products was actually a lot easier because there was some type of like a dissociation between myself and selling myself and my wisdom and my teachings versus like, here, I made this product and you can sell it. But what I've realized over time, I mean, especially even with digital courses that are products that we pour our hearts and our souls into, sales is really personal. And I think people are really quick to saying, I don't like sales. I'm not good at sales, not realizing that it is truly a skill set that you can develop, a skill set that has a lot to do with working on your personal development. And again, building that spiritual, building your own spiritual practice. And so that could seem like a big jump for people. Like what? I don't understand. But to me, part of a sales conversation, and it's not just a sales call or like a sales pitch. We're selling anytime we show up on social media. I'm selling right now, and not directly, but indirectly in the way that I'm speaking, the things that I'm sharing, my cadence. We are putting deals out there on the table for people to receive or reject all the time. Because sales is just an energy exchange. It doesn't always have to mean like somebody's giving me money for me to give them a product. It could mean I'm putting out this social media post and the energy exchange is that you may like it, or that you may just watch it, or you may do something with it. So anyways, back to building a spiritual practice and how that relates to sales is a spiritual practice to me is how I build up my trust and my faith. And when I mean faith, I mean like my trust that my journey is exactly what it needs to be. And with sales, a lot of times the nervousness comes from, ooh, like, what if they don't buy? Or, ooh, what if they do buy? And then I have to show up and do the work because I just raised my prices. Am I actually going to be able to show up now? A lot of the nerves also could come from just truly being rejected and somebody being rude, which has happened. Somebody maybe being offended by the way that you price your offers. And so first step to start to work through this is actually ask yourself, like, what are you so nervous about? Because these things may actually really surprise you. And then your spiritual practice comes in, which is, how can I have so much faith that however this works out is exactly how it's supposed to? It's the lessons that I need to learn. If I get rejected, I get to work with that. I get to see, oh, that's funny. I just had a flashback to me being rejected by this boy I really liked, and he called me thunder thighs. Like that has come up in a couple of meditations that I've had in the last 2 weeks from a sales call, right? Or from a social media post, somebody saying something nasty, or people not reacting at all. So all of these experiences when it comes to sales, because sales, again, is just an energy exchange, just putting ourselves out there, are just mirrors to every single time we got rejected, not celebrated by ourselves, but also by the people who, we really wanted to see us and to celebrate us. And so understanding like, okay, I can use these containers as an opportunity to develop my spiritual growth, to develop my trust in myself, and see like these wounds and these triggers that I'm bumping up against and heal them and work on them and know that this is for the highest service of my journey. And also if the person says no, that is in the highest service for their journey. And I think when we could get out of ego and like tap into our hearts, we could all really believe and trust like, hey, if they don't want to work with us, thank goodness, because it was not on our path. They need to go co-create with somebody else or maybe alone for a while. And that's fine.
I love that. Yeah. And I think about sales a lot. Obviously, I talk about sales a lot, mainly focused on content and selling through content. And, it's like the elephant in the room of like creative entrepreneurship, right? Is that resistance to sales. And there's just like, selling really needs a rebrand. Like there's a lot of people who have been giving it a bad name, like the car salesman, like the promoters, like the skeezy scammers. And, I think it's so important to be having these conversations and to recognize that, particularly as women, as creative women, as spiritually minded entrepreneurs, like we are creating new ways of doing things. And I think it's a tricky conversation because on one hand, we can start to really overcomplicate things when we're kind of like in resistance. And if you've seen something being done a certain way, and there's a part of you that rejects that, which, now we become, when we have that deeper awareness, we know that's just like our insecurities looking for something, a reason to not do something that's scary or potentially putting ourselves out there for rejection, right? Because obviously there are just some key fundamentals there. Like it's just communication. Like you say, we're selling all the time. And I think something I've been thinking about lately is just reminding us that we desire this. Like it's a desire for us to make sales because, we want to reach people with our work. We want to receive money. We want to have abundance to do more of the things that we want to do and create fun things and good things in the world. So it's a desire for us to make sales. It's a desire for us to get good at selling. And, I believe that our desires are like, they're just a part of the ecosystem. Like they're normal, like they're needed. There's a reason that we desire certain things. Yeah. And I think sometimes, particularly within the spiritual community, people start to overcomplicate things. And, you know, there's a lot of like very flowery language for things that are really just like the fundamentals of business. And I totally get that, right? Like whatever sets your soul on fire, whatever makes you feel really good about your work and the work that you're doing. But at the heart of it, it's like clear communication between humans that creates, you know, intentional results. And sometimes, like marketing and sales can feel like it has the potential to feel boring and repetitive, because it's like saying the same thing over and over, like communicating clearly, you know, putting your work out there, telling another person about the same thing you've told so many other people about, which is why it's so important to, you know, like you said, really like align with your desires and take that spiritual growth approach to it and recognize that there's so much in it for us when we lean into that discomfort. And so, I would love your thoughts on.
Yeah, totally. On that. Well, something that comes up for me there is I really see sales when done in the way that we're talking about, heart-centered, in integrity, transparency. I see it as truly like one of the I will say the funnest parts of being a business owner. And like students who have worked with me literally have said, like, I think sales are fun now. Not only fun, but also deeply healing, not only for the person who is like facilitating the sales call or the pitch or the piece of content in all of the ways that we've just talked about. It gives you the opportunity to deal with the stuff you haven't dealt with yet. Like, that's awesome. That's like therapy. And take it to your coach or take it to your therapist or take it to your journal, right? But also for the person coming on, because I think what people don't realize is that when you claim your desire to put yourself out there, to receive money, to be able to do what your soul is calling you to do, you're giving people permission to do the same. So even if it triggers them, like your price is always going to trigger people. That's just what it is. Like when you're pricing your offer, like somebody's going to have an opinion on it always, because they may not feel like they're worthy of spending that money on themselves. They may have not been taught or shown that that's acceptable. They may not have yet felt comfortable ever even imagining somebody paying them for something like that, right? And so when we mirror that to people, that is like a healing, very expansive, very inspiring opportunity for them. And then also too, if you are conducting sales conversations in the way that I like to teach, you are seeing people. You are listening to them deeply. You're creating that space and that container for them to be really honest with themselves, to be really honest with somebody who they can feel through like business energetics, through sales energetics, which is literally just leading with your heart. Yeah, so you can have a script, you can have like a strategy, but you lead it with your heart, right? Most people don't have a person in their life daily who is like, tell me about what is really blocking you from doing that thing. What do you feel about that? Like most people aren't doing that. Like, even if you're in like a conscious relationship or this and that, like I am, like, we're busy. Like most of the time we're not sitting down for half an hour and like talking about all of our fears and dreams and visions on a daily basis. And so when we can create that space for somebody, it's beautiful. Like magic could really happen in that space. And even if you're just speaking on on social media or through your writing, really tapping into the soul of who you're writing to, who you're connecting to. And I think too, like one of the things you said, like with sales, it totally needs to rebrand. So right, we're rebranding it right now, which is really cool. It has this very like car salesman trickery rooted in being like deceitful. And I've really narrowed this down to the hook. And so everybody's probably familiar with like, oh, with sales, like you need a hook, like what's going to get them. And so if you really think about that, when you're fishing and you hook a fish, that is pure trickery. Like they think they're getting the little worm. Meanwhile, they're getting hooked and taken to this land that they don't want to be in, where I don't want to hook anybody. I want to create the space. I want to put my offer out there. I want to understand if this person's the right fit for me by asking them certain questions, pre-qualifying them, in my content to see if they can relate to it. Clearly and simply go over my offer, explain to them what they're going to get and what the result is going to be in that. And then I want to leave space for them to swim over and make a conscious step forward. I don't want to hook them. And so I think too, like if anything could really help when it comes to sales, it's get comfortable in the silence with yourself, get comfortable just putting things out there and letting it be, not being attached to it as best as you possibly can.
Yeah. I think from what you've said, the things that are really important for this sales rebrand that we're doing is like, yeah, it's an uncomfortable process for a number of different reasons. And I think for people who genuinely want to be in integrity, like that fear of like being told that you have to do something out of integrity in order to get what you want, like that's a really big fear for people. And so I think acknowledging that like integrity and truth get to be foundational values of your business, of all your conversations, especially your sales conversations, because that alone, I remember when I started integrating that into the way that I was doing sales, I was like, oh my God, like it just took such a weight off, like you suddenly don't have to overthink things or think about like, what am I supposed to say next? Or how, what should I respond to this person to make them say yes to my offer? Instead of just being like, oh, like I can just tell the truth and they can tell the truth. And if it works out and they genuinely want to work with me and I genuinely want to have them to work with me, then it's a yes. And if it's a not, then that's better off for everybody. So that is like such a big weight off. And yeah, and just being in integrity with like, well, what do you want? Because when it comes down to it, like we don't want to manipulate people. We don't want to convince people that don't want to work with us, particularly when you work so intimately with people as you do when you're a coach. Like you want to be picky. It's like dating. You only want to work with people that genuinely are a good fit for you. Otherwise, it's not going to be very fun for either of you. So I think, yeah, that's super, super important. And I can't remember the other question I was going to ask you, but I love this conversation so much. And I think it's so important. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Just acknowledging that this is an edge for women to be making money and also for women to be making money for intellectual property, because remembering like what I saw somebody post about this on Instagram. I can't remember who it was, but just this idea of, like women has, traditionally been unpaid labor, right? And then the next step for women to start to be paid for their labor was like, okay, well, we'll be paid for, whatever, like housekeeping and jobs that, is physical labor that we're used to seeing women in those roles. But what we're less used to seeing is women in the roles of like receiving money for intellectual property. Like even writers would publish under a pen name as a man, right? So this is an edge, and it's just culturally triggering for people, because when you're so used to getting things for free from women or not acknowledging them or not paying for them. So recognizing that in doing this work in sales and asking for what we want, like we're creating a new culture, right? And that's why it's edgy. That's why it's triggering. That's why people sometimes don't respond in the most open-minded ways. And, that's like really important work that we get to do. And there's so much growth for us in being able to do that as well.
That was so powerful. Absolutely. You touched on something so important too, which is receiving. Like I really do think the sales process, which, specifically getting money to share your work with people, your art, your creativity, it is a mirror to every sticky area in our life. Truly, like I believe it is. And we can work on being more comfortable with receiving money and putting ourselves in the positions to receive money, really putting ourselves out there. If we can work on receiving in every area of our life, like receiving deep intimacy, receiving pleasure in our partnerships and asking for pleasure, like receiving help from people, like asking people like, hey, I'm kind of drowning. Like, can you help me? Can you pick up the groceries? Like, can you just come over and listen to me tonight? Can we have a girls' night? Like, is it okay? I'm taking the weekend off. Like I'm putting my phone away, like messaging your people and just receiving that space. That is truly, I think, probably one of the biggest ways to kind of speed this process up. is just ask yourself, how can I get more comfortable receiving in every single area? And the only way you're going to get more comfortable is if you practice it.
Yeah, I love this so much. And yeah, I truly believe that like every problem will be fixed in our world when women get good at asking for what we want and for taking a stand for receiving it. Like that's when the wage gap is going to be closed. That's when women are going to have more power and influence to create the changes that we so desperately need. And it's a skill. Like it's, you know, it's uncomfortable when we've grown up in a way where we've been conditioned to not ask, or to ask and not get it and be refused and, you know, be faced with disappointment. Or, you know, self-rejection as a result of that, thinking, oh, I must not be worthy, I must not be good enough, it's not possible. And to, you know, recognizing that there are protective mechanisms in place to save us from the pain of the disappointment. It takes so much courage to ask for what we want and to put ourselves out there, but that's literally the only way that we get what we want. I could talk to you about this all day. It's such a big topic, and there's so many strands to this conversation that are so deeply rooted in such really like important aspects of just being a woman, let alone an entrepreneur, let alone a creative and a spiritual entrepreneur. So I know tons of people, I'm sure, would be super interested in hearing more about what you have to say on this topic. So please share, like, where can people find you? What have you got going on at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. So mostly my focus is split up between my private clients, whether I'm working with them with Reiki and strengthening their intuition, or like also in business, obviously, but then also Zen Boss Academy. So Zen Boss Academy is my conscious business school. We open enrollment like 2 times a year. So that's usually where I direct people who are interested in really taking their businesses to the next level and really embodying this more like spiritual sales process. And so you can find more about that at Zen Boss Academy on Instagram, and then at Samantha Bove. And then you can just go to samanthabove.com and you'll see all the goodies there.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing all of your wisdom. And thank you everybody for watching. Please share this episode with anybody you know needs to hear it, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much.
For more inspirational content, head over to my website withsarahmac.com, and please support the show by liking, commenting, and subscribing.